Dear everybody, welcome to the second session of Business English classes hosted by the U.S. Embassy in Armenia. First of all, I want to express our deepest gratitude for your involvement, for your comments, and I can assure you that absolutely every single comment, absolutely every single like made us really happy. Today, I want to start the lesson with a quotation, one that is really very useful for business people. It runs like, the difference between success and failure is the ability to take action. So this quotation, the author of this quotation is Alexander Bell, the inventor of the telephone. So today we're going to talk about telephoning. Today we're going to touch upon the issues of making, answering the phone calls, checking for the information, holding a call, non-availability, leaving messages, connection problems, and of course, voicemail messages. Phone answering skills are really critical for business, and the way your company phone is answered talks much about your general business. And to make a call, first of all, you need to have a telephone. So you take the receiver and you dial a number. So to dial a number, you need to have the actual number itself. So sometimes the calls might be international ones, and if the call is an international one, you first of all need to have the country code, the area code, or the mobile operator code, and the actual number itself. So the country code for Armenia is 374. This is the country code. First of all, you dial the country code. Then you come up with the area code. Let me find my card. You come up with the area code. The area code for Yerevan is 10, or you dial the mobile operator code, that is 91 or 98 or 55, and the actual phone number itself. So you use a telephone to answer a call, to make a call, and to forward a call, or to key in a call. So you make a call, you answer a call, you forward the call, or you put through. Okay. So when you dial a number, you first of all take the receiver and press the buttons. Okay. Actually, the buttons consist of specific figures, and two buttons that are of special attention. They are the star key and the hash. I wanted to draw your attention to the fact that in Armenian and English, there's a specific difference between producing the phone number in Armenian and in English. So when you produce a phone number in Armenian, you come up with double figures. That is, you say, my phone number is 22, 23, 24. But in English, when you come up with the phone number, you produce every single digit, every single figure separately. That is, you say, my phone number is 22, 23, 24. When you make a phone call, especially if that's a business one, you've got to be specific about the way you talk. If that's a business call, then better answer the phone call before the third ring. And you've got to be very enthusiastic, warm, professional, and polite. Because as I said previously, your manners of speaking talk much about your business. So when you take the receiver and welcome the caller, you've got to be, as I said, polite, and you've got to identify yourself and the company you work for. That is, for example, you may come up with an answer like, U.S. Embassy in Armenia, Lilith speaking, how may I help you? And you've got to be very specific about your language, as this is a business call. I mean, you should try to restrict yourself from slang expressions and from colloquial speech. So instead of saying, for example, okay, or no problem, better come up with expressions like sure, very well, or all right. So try not to use the words like okay or no problem when you are talking on business profile. When the official part is over, you've got to pass on to the actual conversation. So when you make a call, you can start your speech like, I'd like to speak to, or you can also say, may I speak to, may I talk to, or you might also say, this is Lilith calling for Sona or Anna or someone of the kind. If your boss delegates you to call on for him, you can come up with an expression like, this is Lilith talking from this organization. I'm calling on the behalf of Mr. Well, say Jackson. And sometimes it's not only that you answer that you make a call, but you answer a call as well. If that's a business profile, then you can take the receiver and answer like Lilith speaking, or you can say Lilith here, or this is Lilith. When you identify yourself, the next thing to do is to give the reasons why you're calling. Thus, you can start your speech like, I'm ringing or I'm calling to discuss, to clarify, to ask about, or you can also say, I just wanted to ask if, or could you please tell me? And sometimes you need to ask for more information to check the information. And if there is anything that you are not quite sure, you're welcome to ask questions. So for asking for more information, you can come up like, excuse me, who is calling? Or you can say, I'm sorry, who is speaking? Or you can just as well say, can you please tell me, for example, can you please tell me the working hours of Mr., for example, Jackson? Or if sometimes when you answer the phone, you may come across a surname, especially if that's a foreign one that you're not quite sure about. I mean, you can say, for example, could you please spell the name, please? Or could you spell it for me, please? Now, what is spelling? Spelling is producing the name, producing the word by letters. For example, if my name is Lilith, and if I spell my name, I will say L-I-L-I-T. Thus, I spelled my name. So if you hear a question like, could you please spell your name? Or could you please spell it? You've got to come up with single letters of the name. To check the information, you can go on saying, can I just check that again? Or could you please repeat that? Or you can just as well say, let me see if I got that right. And at times it happens that people call, but that's a wrong destination. I mean, that's a wrong number. So not to sound polite, you might say, are you sure you have the right number? Or you might also say, I'm sorry, there is nobody by that name. Or you can just as well say, I'm sorry, I'm afraid you've dialed the wrong number. Or you might as well say, I'm sorry, I think you've got the wrong number. And in a business profile phone calls, you sometimes need to forward the call or put through. Or you need to take time to clarify about a specific detail or something of the kind. And thus, you've got to ask the speaker to hold. You've got to ask person to wait. And no matter how nice and positive your company's hold music is, waiting is always, always annoying. So you've got to be very specific about this. You've got to be extremely polite. And you can come up like, could you please hold on a bit? Or do you mind holding on the line? Or would you wait for a moment, please? Or you can just as well say, if you please hold a second, in case you're forwarding the call, you can say, if you please hold a second, I will forward your call to, and you can clarify the detail that you're seeking for. When you get back to the call, never forget to thank the person, because it's really annoying to wait. So when you get back to the line, you can say, sorry to keep you waiting, or you can just as well say, thank you for holding, or I'll put you through now, or you can say, the line is free now, I'll put you through. And sometimes, especially when you're a telephone operator and you've got to forward the call, sometimes it happens that the person who the call should be forwarded to is not available, or is not inclined to talk, or is busy at the moment. Now, how should we do not to sound rude? You can say, for example, I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson is not available at the moment. Or you can just as well say, I'm afraid the line is engaged. Could you call back later? Or I'm afraid Mr. Jackson, for example, is at the meeting. I don't know why I come up with the name of Jackson, probably because I'm a great fan of Michael Jackson. Or you might just as well say, for example, Mr. Robinson, for example, is out at the moment. Or, for example, I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson is out of the office today. And the next thing to do after saying this is to ask for a message. To do it, you can say, would you like to leave a message? Or could I take a message? Or would you like, and the name of the person, would you like Mr. Brown to call you back? Or should I tell him who is calling? And sometimes, even before you ask for a message, the person expresses his inclination to leave the message himself, or maybe you are the person to leave a message. You can say, in such cases, you can say, could you please take a message? Tell Mr. and the name to call me back, or I'd like to leave a message to Mr. for example, Brown, or let him know that, and you go on with your message. At this point, I want to go back to Alexander Bell, who once said that the day will come when the man at the telephone will be able to see the distant person to whom he is speaking. Evidently, he was seeing through the time, because the time came when we were able to see each other. And technology and the advances of technology never come alone. So they mostly come together with specific problems. So in case you have connection problems, and it happens quite often, there is absolutely no need to panic, no need to get confused. So it's quite okay to say, I'm sorry, I can't hear you well. Or for example, you might just as well say, sorry, the reception is very bad. Or you can just as well say, sorry, you're breaking up. Could you please call back again? When you end a call, you first of all, again, need to thank the person, the caller. And to do it, you might say, thank you very much for calling, or thank you for your time. And if you are the caller yourself, and if you got assistance and help, you might say, thank you very much for your help. You've been very helpful. You've been most helpful, or anything of the kind. Sometimes it happens that, especially in business profile telephone calls, it happens that you call the person, but the person is not available and there is no one to answer. For example, that's a late time and there is no one in the office. So you've got to come up with voicemail messages. When you yourself create a voicemail message, the first thing to do is to identify yourself again, then to apologize for not answering, and then to invite the person to leave a message. I will come up with a small, like very ordinary voicemail message. You can say, for example, you have reached Lilith Termendjan. Unfortunately, I can't talk to you now, but if you leave a message and include your name and telephone number, I will get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you for your calling. Another thing that I want to draw your attention to is that when you make a telephone call, especially if that's at the very beginning of the call, the specific grammar to be used with telephoning is present continuous, that is present progressive. You can come up with present progressive tense, that is say, I am calling to, or I want to talk to, or you can say, for example, I'm contacting, and you go on, but a specific attention should be paid to voicemail messages. When you leave a voicemail message, you've got to come up with past progressive. You might say, for example, I was calling to clarify, and you go on talking, or I wanted to discuss with you, I was calling to discuss and the topic of the discussion. Immediately after the lesson, we will upload some dialogues for your use and some vocabulary block and some exercises so that you keep busy during the week. And now with it's my great honor to welcome Public Affairs Officer Rob Андерсон. Please, the floor to you.
Hello, everybody. Well, thanks, Lilith. And let me first just say, you're all very fortunate because you have an excellent instructor here. And so everything she said, just take notes and do exactly as she said, and you're going to be fine. I think the dialogues that she's about to post will also be very useful because it's good to just practice some of these phrases. Now, I'm a diplomat, and so I've had to learn now 3 different languages. I've learned Armenian and Dutch and Spanish. And I have to say the hardest part about learning a language for me was speaking on the telephone. And I think we're accustomed to seeing, communication, so much of it is nonverbal. And so when we see each other and we communicate, we react to body language, and we can more or less communicate without even having to say very much. So when we get on the telephone, we don't have that ability. And I find it's very hard because you have to listen attentively and then respond appropriately. So thankfully, as Lilith mentioned, we have new technologies now. So we can do a lot of communication, using video as well, and that helps. But there are going to be cases where we use the telephone, and especially in business, in diplomacy, we use it often, where you can't really just call somebody out of the blue on Skype, for instance. You need to pick up the phone and call, and then you have to go through this routine. And actually what Lilith, the phrases that she mentioned and the dialogues were spot on. One of the things that I'll just emphasize that Lilith mentioned, and I will second that is to be polite on the telephone. I think that's one of the most important things because you don't know the person, and so it's just very important to use a very polite tone and to try to use formal grammar, formal tense, and using the present continuous or past continuous as she mentioned. And but I think being polite is probably the most important thing. And if you call someone, I always think also, because now we're so accustomed to sending people messages first, so we send a message, are you free to talk, or should we talk later or something. In business, that's not always the case. You're just calling someone and you're expected to have a communication right then. So I would say it's nice also to say when you call, and if you actually reach the person, to say, is this a good time? Or do you have time to talk right now? And then it's perfectly okay on the other end if someone calls you to say, actually, now's not a good time. Can I call you back later? Or can you call me in 15 minutes? Something like that. So I think that's a good way to start. And then as far as my advice, I guess, to practice these telephone conversations, I can say from my own personal experience, and that is to just practice talking on the phone. And a safe way to do that is to do it with your friends, for instance. So, talk to one of your friends who speaks some English. Just actually call each other and have a conversation and speak in English. And then you'll see, it'll feel uncomfortable in the beginning, but then you'll kind of start to get the feel for it. You can always try to call a native speaker if you have that opportunity. I mean, and if you want to practice together, you can do something as simple as going, one person stay in one room and another person go in another room, and then have a dialogue, because it's similar to being on the telephone, where you take out the nonverbal communication. So I'll just leave you with those few things. I just want to say thank you for tuning in. And please submit your questions. Please follow along, do the activities, and I'll turn it back over to Lilith, I think, to close us out.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to end the session with the previous exercise feedback. I wanted to read the answers to the previous exercise if there are people who are interested in it. So the first one was, I'm sorry you don't really like my point, but we can agree to disagree. May I have a word? In my opinion, I think we should spend some more time on this point. Excuse my interrupting. Don't you think we should discuss the Smith account? Number 4, I'm afraid you don't understand my feedback. That's not what I meant. Let's stick to the point, why don't we? We need to decide on our strategy. Number 6, I suggest we put this point off until our next meeting. Number 7, I'm sorry, Tom, but that's outside the scope of this meeting. Let's get back on track. Number 8, dear colleagues, please join me in welcoming Jane Butler, our newly appointed HR coordinator. Robert, I'd like to get your input on the assignments you had. And the last one, since there is too much work to be done, we're going to allocate tasks to each of you. If you have any specific questions, then I'll be happy to answer them. And the first one comes from Nare Hairapetyan, and she's saying, when you're cold calling, I will call you back is the last thing you want to hear. Let me get the question. Exactly. So I will call you back. That's a kind of not very, so to say, welcoming note, but you can add a couple of words like, I will call you back, please, if that doesn't make a problem, and you will fix the whole situation if that's what you meant. Our next meeting is going to take place on the 23rd of November, Thursday, 5 p.m. I'll be looking forward to seeing all of you online. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.